In the collective memory of a nation, there are dates that become more than just numbers on a calendar. They are turning points, moments of sudden, cataclysmic change. For Israel, that date is now October 7th, 2023. It was a day that began with the peaceful hum of a Jewish holiday and ended with a level of trauma and violence not seen in generations. This is a comprehensive look at what happened on that day. A story not just of war, but of a profound breach of trust, a failure of imagination, and the very human cost of conflict. What occurred was a coordinated, multi-front attack by Hamas and other militant groups from the Gaza Strip. It was a meticulous and audacious plan, one that shattered every assumption about security and deterrence. The assault was an incredible tactical and intelligence success for its perpetrators, and a devastating failure for Israel. The attack commenced just after sunrise. It started with a massive and unprecedented rocket barrage, designed not just to cause damage, but to act as a diversion. Thousands of rockets were launched towards southern and central Israel, overwhelming the Iron Dome missile defense system and sending the population rushing for shelter. Simultaneously, the main invasion began. Hamas militants used small commercial drones to drop bombs on Israel's highly sophisticated surveillance towers and automated machine gun turrets along the border fence. These were the eyes and ears of the border, and within moments they were blinded. Following this, bulldozers were used to tear down the fence, creating dozens of entry points for thousands of armed fighters. They poured into Israel on motorcycles, in pickup trucks, on foot, and even on motorized paragliders, bypassing the heavily fortified border with shocking ease. At that moment, the Israel Defense Forces were in disarray. The initial reports were confused, and the scale of the attack was completely underestimated. The small number of soldiers at border posts, many of whom were young conscripts, were overwhelmed and fought heroically, but they were no match for the sheer number of attackers. The fog of war was complete. The militants' targets were not just military bases, they were the heart of civilian life. One of the first and most horrific sights was the Nova Music Festival. Located just a few miles from Gaza, thousands of young people were celebrating life at an outdoor event. As rockets began to fall, an alarm was sounded, but the attendees had little time to flee. Militants surrounded the area, trapping the festival goers. They opened fire indiscriminately, hunting down people as they ran through open fields. Survivors recount hiding for hours in bushes, under cars, and in bomb shelters, only to have militants throw grenades inside. The massacre at the Nova Festival alone claimed over 360 lives. As the attacks on the festival were unfolding, other militant cells were fanning out into the nearby communities, the kibbutzim of the Gaza envelope. These were small, peaceful towns, many founded by pioneers, and they were wholly unprepared for what came next. In places like Kfar Aza and Be'eri, militants went from house to house. Eyewitness accounts and subsequent reports describe a horrifying scene of systematic, premeditated violence. Families were executed in their safe rooms. Houses were set on fire, forcing residents to flee and into the waiting gunfire of the attackers. Some families were killed as they huddled together, their homes becoming their tombs. For hours, residents hid, whispering to loved ones on their phones, listening to the sounds of their neighbors being murdered. The heroism of small local security teams who fought to protect their communities became a beacon in the darkness. But they were a handful of men armed with pistols against an army of heavily armed militants. The brutality of the attack was compounded by a terrifying new element: the systematic taking of hostages. Men, women, children, and the elderly were abducted and taken into Gaza. Among them were over 40 foreign nationals, including Thai workers, Nepalese students, and citizens from dozens of other countries who had been living and working in Israel. This was not a random act. The use of human shields and bargaining chips was a key part of the attackers' strategy. The Israel Defense Forces, still grappling with the scale of the infiltration, began a difficult and slow process of recapture. The military had to navigate a landscape of besieged communities while simultaneously fighting off attackers and trying to rescue civilians. Small units of special forces and lone soldiers rushed to the scene on their own initiative, engaging in close-quarters combat to try and retake the communities and save lives. The day ended with the realization that a catastrophic security failure had occurred, one that would require a complete reevaluation of Israel's military and political leadership. In the days and weeks that followed, the full human cost of the attack became clear. Over 1,200 people were killed in a single day, the largest loss of Jewish life in one day since the Holocaust. The nation was plunged into a state of profound shock and grief. The long and difficult process of identifying the victims began, and the stories of the survivors and the heroism of first responders began to emerge. The international response was complex. Many nations unequivocally condemned the attacks and expressed solidarity with Israel. Yet, the brutal nature of Israel's retaliatory strikes, which targeted Hamas infrastructure within the densely populated Gaza Strip, led to a rapidly escalating humanitarian crisis. A full-scale blockade was implemented, and the subsequent ground invasion resulted in a massive loss of life for Palestinian civilians and widespread displacement. This brought the international community's focus to the dire humanitarian situation in Gaza, igniting global protests and further polarizing an already divided world. The events of October 7th were not just a single-day tragedy. They were a pivotal moment in the Israeli-Palestinian conflict, a bloody chapter that has set a new, terrifying precedent for violence. The day's legacy is one of enduring trauma for a nation, a humanitarian crisis for a people, and a stark reminder that even the most seemingly secure of borders can be broken, leaving behind a trail of grief and a future defined by a struggle to find a new path forward.